Hello everyone. Welcome to our workshop. It's called Less Stress, More Time. I'm Julie with the Elite Graduate Program, and today we also have Dr. Teresa Sharp and Dr. Jeff Elder from the University Counseling Center. They will be sharing with us some time management techniques and tips, and then we will follow that with some stress management. And hopefully by the time everybody leaves, they'll be, just so relaxed they can barely walk. But with no further ado, here's Dr. Sharp.
Well, hello everyone. I'm really glad to be here. I think these topics, time management and stress management, are so important for all of us, and especially in grad school. Grad school is a time when just a lot of pressures on a person, and so having tools and skills and ideas about coping with all the pressure, all the deadlines that you all have to deal with, definitely something that the Counseling Center wants to support and help you with. And just to put a little plug in for the Counseling Center, we work with lots of graduate students, and so want you to know that our services are for you too. All our services are free for students. We're located in Driftwood. I brought some of our pamphlets with us, and so you're welcome to take some of those, and then Julie probably will have some of those too for those of you who are not able to attend in person. Okay. So when you guys think about time management, what comes to mind? Schedules.
Overcommitment.
Overcommitment. Mm-hmm. Is time management challenging at this point in your life? I'm seeing some nods. Yeah. What makes it challenging right now?
A lot of things just popping up out of nowhere. You might have to attend to.
Okay, so unexpected things that you need to take care of that maybe you hadn't anticipated, you didn't expect to have to squeeze in there. Mm-hmm. Okay, juggling work and school. That's challenging, and most of you are doing exactly that, and maybe you have family obligations or personal life too, trying to kind of manage all of those simultaneously. That can be challenging. Okay. So one of the first questions that I have, and I gave you a piece of yellow paper because we're going to sort of make this a little bit experiential, is to answer the question, what is your relationship to time? And if you could write that down on this piece of paper. We think sometimes about relationships with other people, with our advisors, but what is your relationship with time? How do you feel about time? What are the thoughts that you have about time on a daily basis?
Pie chart, and there's so many slices that I can't even see any wedges anymore.
Okay.
There's so much to do.
Yeah, so your pie is just like overflowing, huh? There's no more room for just one more slice of anything. Okay, and I started the presentation with this question to provide sort of a framework for us today. This idea that, all of us, have obligations, deadlines, various things that we're trying to juggle. And a lot of times when things get hectic and stressful, many of us are just sort of moving as fast as we can, trying to manage everything. And there are probably a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings that go along with that. Is anybody willing to kind of share some of the things that you wrote down about your relationship with time?
There's never enough time in the day.
Okay, never enough time in the day. So probably that thought goes through your head over and over again, day in, day out.
So just off the top of my head, but I kind of feel like sometimes my downtime isn't just not really congruent with what downtime should be. I come off the day and I'm still kind of hyped up and can't really relax when it's time to relax.
Okay. Yeah, so that idea, even kind of when you get a break, just kind of wound up, not really able to relax. And so, almost sort of being cheated out of that relaxation time because of kind of the hectic pace of the day.
So I view it as a limited resource, but for me it's difficult sometimes to prioritize how and to whom it should be allocated.
Okay, so again, kind of this delicate balancing act, right? Okay. Now, some of you have alluded to this, but what are some of, as you think about kind of a typical day or week, what are some of the things that really drain you and deplete you? Email, okay. Just keeping up with that.
That's like a full-time job.
You're out of the office for a couple days and just, that inbox is overflowing.
You're overflowing while you're still in the office. You're too busy doing everything else.
Yeah, I think you talked about how, sometimes it feels like, your plate is already full, and then, here's one more thing that you need to do that you hadn't expected that gets passed along to you. So that sense of, how am I going to squeeze in one more thing? And you can write this one down, but I imagine probably even just off the top of your head, what are some of the things that kind of drain and deplete you? That kind of wipe you out? That you get tired just thinking about? Work?
Going to my office because it's noisy there.
Okay, so sometimes environmental factors like the space, is noisy, it's not so conducive to being productive or focusing. Okay. So for each of us, it probably is different things that drain us. Some of these things we have control over, some of the things we don't. But I think this question is important too in terms of recognizing, are there people in my life that drain me? Are there things that perhaps I could do about that so that that is not taxing me so much? Are there things that I can do to kind of improve my workspace? Are there tasks or duties that I could delegate? Are there things that I haven't done, and the fact that I haven't done them and they are hanging over my head, is that something that drains me? Just sort of the worry, the anxiety of procrastinating on things. And this could be things related to academia, like you're supposed to set that meeting with your advisor to talk about your thesis proposal, and you keep putting it off. Now we're in October, so that stress is rising. Or it could be even, basic things like you're overdue for a doctor's appointment, or, it's been 2 weeks, you haven't called your mom back yet. So even those little things that sort of on our to-do list that we don't get around to, or filling the air in my tires and worrying, oh, one of these days I'm going to come out there and have a flat, right? So all these little things that we put off, and yet by putting them off, they sort of weigh on us a little bit. Okay. Now turn your paper over, and I want you to list your top 3 priorities for this month. Okay, and this is just for you. If they're not academic related, that's okay. List your top 3 priorities for this month. The 3 things that are most important to you this month. Okay, and my reason for asking you to do this is because in our hectic, busy lives, most of us have to-do lists a mile long, if we even have a to-do list or remember where we put it. And that can be pretty overwhelming. Just looking at that list, trying to figure out how am I going to get all this stuff done. But what are my top 3 as a way to sort of really boil it down to what is most essential. Okay, and what I would recommend is, you're writing this on your paper, but what you might want to do is actually kind of post that somewhere where you can see it every day, whether it's like in a notebook that you use every day, next to your computer, on your refrigerator, because this idea of really recognizing what are my priorities, at least for this month, they may change for next month, can keep us a little bit more grounded and centered, okay? And remind us, okay, if this is in my top 3, I need to make time for it. Even those times maybe when I feel like I can't manage one more thing, because this is really important. Because so often, the things that actually matter least are the things that take up most of our time. And so I heard this quote recently, and I wanted to share it with you all. Things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least. Okay? So true, and yet so challenging sometimes, to prioritize that way and really kind of focus on the things that are our true priorities, because there are always so many demands on us. Okay. So one exercise, and we're not going to do it now, but I would really encourage you to do it on your own, is to try doing a time inventory. Okay, so I recommend doing it for a week, but if a week seems like too much, try it even for a day. And in this time inventory, really look at how are you spending your time every day, okay? And looking at things like, when do I waste my time? Okay, when does time seem to get away from me? Are there times that other people waste my time? Are there times where I'm more or least productive? Okay, so maybe if you're not a morning person, planning to do, some really heavy reading or research in the morning isn't optimal. You end up going to the library and kind of spacing out for a couple hours. And so you lose a couple hours. You're not really productive then. Are there unnecessary tasks that I can eliminate to gain time? Things that maybe you're in the habit of doing, things that maybe you end up doing when there are other more pressing things that need to be done. And so really kind of taking, a realistic look at that. And as you do your time inventory, looking at, are there chunks of time that maybe sort of pass by that I could use, even to study for a few minutes for my comps, or to kind of brainstorm some ideas for the thesis, or, to read kind of a couple paragraphs in an article. Okay. So another component of time management is recognizing when and how you procrastinate. Okay. How many of you procrastinate sometimes? Okay, just about all of us. Why do you think we do that?
Laziness.
The quicker you get behind, the more time you have to catch up.
Because there's more pleasant things to do than what I'm procrastinating.
Yes, so all of those are so true. This idea that most of us at any given time would rather be doing something other than what we have to do, or kind of this task that needs to be done. So procrastinating allows us at least to postpone it temporarily. But what's the cost of procrastination? Okay, a lot of times it adds to our stress because we're not getting any more time. If anything, time is diminishing. That project or task that we need to do is not going away. So even though we realize that procrastination often causes us stress, many of us continue to do it, right? And why do you think that is? Maybe same reasons. Okay.
I do it when I feel very unsure about exactly how I should proceed. And I don't want to admit to other people that I have that confusion, so I don't go ask anybody, and so I sit there and try to figure it out myself rather than just ask.
Okay, yeah. So, and I think for each of us, procrastination can be a little bit different. So that idea is sometimes uncertainty, sometimes perfectionism. You said laziness. Maybe for some people it's anxiety, but there can be different underlying factors for different people with procrastination. But very important to understand how that operates for you, maybe the cost and the benefits of procrastination. Sometimes we continue to procrastinate because in some ways that behavior has been kind of reinforced or rewarded, right? When you finish the term paper at the last minute, in a couple hours and end up acing it, then on some level, the conclusion is, hey, I can get away with doing that. I don't have to suffer with doing, rewrites for days and days. On the other hand, kind of when you're down to the final hour and the computer crashes and the printer jams and all those other things, then, a lot of us are like, why did I procrastinate? Never again. Okay, so just some real kind of quick strategies, ideas for conquering procrastination. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this one, but just setting and committing to realistic goals, okay? And that commitment part is an important part, so, and making those a priority. Breaking tasks into, I guess that got hidden there, but breaking tasks into manageable chunks, okay? Because sometimes when I think, I'm going to write this whole paper today, it's just too much, right? Whereas, if I tell myself, okay, I'm going to spend an hour reading these articles, then I'm going to spend, an hour tomorrow coming up with the outline, and breaking it up in chunks so that those are more manageable. The 5-minute plan is where you tell yourself, I'm just going to work on this for 5 minutes. Because often the hardest part is getting started. For many of us, thinking about, I'm going to have to work on this for the next 2 hours or half the day is too much. But sometimes we can trick ourselves into getting started by saying, hey, I'll just work on this for 5 minutes. And the reality is, even in 5 minutes, you can get a little chunk of work done, right? You can maybe write a paragraph, write part of an outline, study some terminology, and so actually get some work done in 5 minutes. Or what might happen is once you've done it for 5 minutes, realize this really isn't so bad. I could probably manage to go for another 5 minutes, or in another 5 minutes, and before you know it, you've been working for an hour or so. And so, try that out if you haven't done that before, the 5-minute plan. Another idea, and you've probably heard this before, is reward yourself for progress. So work before you play. So that, and this idea of, okay, if I finish reading these chapters or finish this statistics homework, then I can go out with my friends, or then I can watch this program on TV. Okay, but not until then. Okay, so if I procrastinate, if I get distracted, then I may not be able to meet everybody at 7 o'clock. So kind of giving yourself something to look forward after you've done the work. Okay, or the last one too, avoid avoiding, feel the resistance and do it anyway. Okay, so just some basic tips. And again, these are nothing probably new to all of you, but, and Julie was talking about this a little bit earlier when I was coming in, is actually taking the time to plan and organize your semester, your month, your week, your day. Okay, I think sometimes once we're kind of in the midst of it, we feel like we don't have time to plan. But planning and being organized, really helps us keep on track. It has many benefits, and a lot of times it doesn't necessarily take a lot of time. Okay, so at the end of the day, to think about tomorrow and what do I need to do tomorrow, or at the beginning of the month, thinking about what are my priorities for this month, what are the deadlines, how do I need to budget my time. That doesn't necessarily take a lot of time, and yet it kind of gives you kind of a framework and a structure for your day, week, semester. Identify your goals and set realistic deadlines to achieve them. Okay, and I really encourage students, there are deadlines that we have, like exams, maybe papers that are due, but there are other deadlines, especially in grad school, that are not as firm. Okay, so you need to prepare for your comps, and you know what day they're going to be, but for yourself, thinking about, okay, what material do I need to be reviewing each week so that I really feel prepared by the time comps roll around? Or, if I am wanting to defend my thesis on such and such a date, how far along do I need to be? by this time next month? When do I need to set those meetings with my advisor? And so really kind of thinking about those dates, putting them on the calendar, telling other people, okay, this is when I want to be finished, because that accountability to other people can definitely help us in terms of staying on track. I already talked about dividing tasks and assignments into smaller chunks so that they don't seem so overwhelming. Even thinking about what can I accomplish on this, big project in, maybe 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, to knock a little bit of that out. Thinking about prioritizing things too, okay? And so, and focusing kind of on those higher priority items first. And building some flexibility into your schedule. Because like you said, you never know what may come up. And sometimes when we kind of book ourselves too tightly, we really, are not able to accommodate those little things that can come up and kind of sort of unsettle that delicate balance that we have in place. Okay? And this is a tough one for some people too, this last one, learning to say no. Being able to set limits with other people, because when you have a lot on your plate, and other people, are asking you for help or support, or for things, and when you're someone who wants to help, likes to be helpful, it can be hard to say no to those requests. And yet, kind of knowing what your priorities are, kind of knowing what the bottom line is, recognizing that sort of, attending to things that you need to get done is equally important, and recognizing that just sometimes that's what needs to be done. Okay, so some basic time management tools, and I'm just going to kind of walk through these pretty quickly. Most of you are familiar with them maybe in some form before. The weekly schedule, and I have a sample one here on the back. This is from A&M College Station, a form that they used when I did my internship up there. But the idea with the time budget sheet is, and you could do this probably, on Excel or in a different program too, is to really kind of think about kind of the days of the week and a typical week for you, and block out, obviously times when you are sleeping, block out those times when you're engaged in different activities, whether it's class or work, meals, getting ready, commuting, and so on. And so look at all those times that are committed every week, blocking those out. Also looking at putting in blocks of time when ideally maybe you could be focused on academic tasks, blocking out social and personal time, because one of the things that definitely adds to our stress is sometimes our lives being out of balance, when our lives are all work and really no time for play or relaxation. So the idea with the time budget sheet is really seeing how many hours I really have in the week. And once I put in kind of all my work and sort of required things, seeing that maybe there really are some chunks here, where there could be some time for me to relax, okay? And realizing that maybe, depending on individual person, maybe the best time for that relaxation time is not necessarily at the end of the day, when you're exhausted and kind of wound up from the day. I mean, maybe you need some strategies to kind of wind down and relax, and Julie's going to share those with us here shortly. But maybe even having a little break in the middle of the day to connect with friends, or to get in a quick workout or something to kind of recharge you for the day. So being creative with that. When I work with students on time management and we use this time budget tool, I often encourage them, if they're going to use the hard copy, to write it in pencil. And try it for a week, see how that works. Okay, if it turns out it's not really reasonable to get up and do yoga at 8 in the morning, okay, try putting that somewhere else. And, realizing you don't have to adhere to the schedule, just religiously, every day, but just, to experiment a little bit with that. See, are there different ways that I could do this to make my life a little bit easier? Okay, semester calendar, and probably all of you use this in some form or another. It could be, again, a calendar that you have on your phone, on your computer. Some people like the wall calendars, some people like the big desk calendars, but just a way to kind of map out kind of major deadlines, dates, and so on. Things related to academia, but maybe also things related to your personal life, family birthdays, weekends out of town, that kind of thing, so that you kind of have a picture overall of what's coming and you can plan accordingly. Okay. To-do list, again, probably many of you have some sort of to-do list. Maybe some of you have multiple to-do lists for work, for school, for personal life. But the idea of keeping some kind of to-do list, writing things down, because most of us, when we have a lot going on, it's hard to keep that all in our head. And so having a list, having something we can refer to really helps. Sometimes when I work with students, especially individuals who tend to, at the end of the day, they lie down in bed and then they start playing in their head all the things that they have to do tomorrow, all the things that they have to do this week. And for those folks, I recommend sometimes making that to-do list, honestly, or keeping a to-do list, or at least a piece of paper right by their bedside and writing some of those things down just so you can get them out of your head, so you don't forget them, and hopefully be able to relax and go to sleep. With a to-do list, for some people they like to have a system where they indicate the priority of the different items, so using some kind of ABC method. So like, A items are higher priority, B lower, and C lowest. Because I think we all have this tendency sometimes to do lower priority items first. I'm working on this paper and all of a sudden it becomes imperative that I clean the bathroom, even though normally I hate cleaning the bathroom. Or making a quick run to HEB. And so really kind of focusing on those priority items. And then as you get things done, having the satisfaction of being able to cross things off the list. Okay, I added this in because, as we were talking earlier, and especially about your relationship to time, I think many of us have this mentality that time is kind of this scarce, precious commodity. And this feeling always, I don't have enough time, how am I going to get everything done, I need more time, I wish there were more hours in the day. And I think, that's a big part of kind of the mentality that we have in our society, certainly, about time. Now, you go to like a European country or South America, it seems very different. You see people relaxing a lot more, not rushing around necessarily the way we do. And so this idea of kind of thinking about sort of time abundance as opposed to time scarcity, and how if we were to shift our thinking to believing or considering the possibility that I really do have enough time to do the things that are really important, how that might impact our lives. Okay, so this idea, and part of the reason why I share this is because this was one of the things, frankly, that got me through grad school. Okay, because schedules are good, time budget sheets are good, but this last mantra, which one of my professors shared with me, it all gets done. Okay, so when I was completely overwhelmed, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this done? How will this ever be finished? Just telling myself, it all gets done. Okay, and focusing on that, repeating that to myself, breathing, using some of the techniques that Julie's going to teach us, having that faith, that belief that somehow it's all going to get done, okay? And these are some other variations. Telling yourself, I have plenty of time to do the things that I need to do. Okay, very different from saying to myself, I'll never have enough time. This isn't going to get all done. I cannot possibly do it. I use my time wisely. I can manage my time effectively. So I encourage you maybe to experiment with some of these, even if you don't believe it completely, and see what that's like to kind of shift your mindset a little bit, even for, an hour or a day. Okay, so in closing, in terms of time management, being aware of how you use time, how you lose time, experimenting a little bit with some of these strategies that I shared with you, knowing your own procrastination pitfalls. Research has shown that in trying to adopt a new habit, usually we need about 3 weeks, 21 days to make it stick. And so that idea, if you try something and you feel like, oh, this really is not working, not necessarily giving up, trying to stick with it or trying to modify it a little bit. and sticking with it for a little bit to see if maybe this could make a difference and help me. All right. Any questions?
What are your thoughts on people who tell you, I work better under stress, I work better under pressure, or I need chaos around me in order to feel like I'm living in a
I think for some people that is true, and especially if they believe that, it's true for them. And so for those people, if they think that those kind of conditions help them, then respecting that. I don't think that's true, for all of us, though. But especially the procrastinators, a lot of times I'll hear that from the chronic procrastinators is that, in order to really be motivated in terms of really being on top of my game, I need that pressure. So. Now, sometimes we'll talk a little bit about, is this really your best product, when you're whipping it out, in a couple hours. Has there ever been a time where, maybe the result wasn't as good as you had hoped it would be? But I think in terms of, for some people, honestly, even when they're studying, they like to have noise and commotion around. Other people need peace and quiet. And so there's a lot of kind of individual variation in terms of, what works well for different people. Any other questions? All right, then I'll turn it over to Julie. Sorry, I went into your time a little bit, Julie.